Hello everyone. Today I haven't really got a specific scripture for you, and I'm really going to be sharing with you what I've been thinking about over the past few days. I've been wondering what to talk about, and something that came into my mind was the fact that we celebrate the ascension of Jesus this week. We did that on Thursday. I was thinking of the way to ascend is through descent. In order to go up, we have to go down. Anyway, I've kind of abandoned that really, although what I'm going to say does kind of relate to that. The topic, I suppose, today is Jesus, the man for others. Dietrich Bonhoeffer is remembered chiefly as the German Lutheran pastor and theologian who was executed by the Nazis for resisting the racial and military policies of Hitler's totalitarian regime. Dietrich Bonhoeffer grew up in Berlin during the era of the Weimar Republic. He lost a brother in the First World War. He experienced the rise to power of Hitler's National Socialists, and he helped to establish the Confessing Church during the German church struggle of the 1930s. Eventually, near the end of the Second World War, Bonhoeffer was hanged as a conspirator against Hitler. While he had been raised as an educated or in an educated, cultured family, and he grew up to set great value by personal integrity and civic duty. Bonhoeffer loved life. He valued honesty and self-discipline, and he rejoiced in the meaningful relationships that he had with various people, and he enjoyed normal human pleasures and loved literature, music, and art. But he never kind of lost himself in a world of pleasures and delights and things that really stimulated him. He had the opportunity to travel and to experience different people, different cultures. He traveled outside of Germany. He went to Rome. He went to Islamic North Africa. He went to Barcelona. He went to New York, and he went to London for a couple of years, I think. And all of these travels influenced his perspective on life. He encountered the Black Church in Harlem, New York, and this gave him a perspective on those who suffer oppression. So he began to see Christianity and to see the world from the perspective of suffering people from below. He believed that for Christians we have a responsibility to be involved. God is as close as the nearest neighbor who is in need. And that, of course, is the teaching of the parable of the Good Samaritan, that our neighbor is anyone who is in need, anyone that we encounter, someone who crosses our path, someone we encounter as we travel the road of life. God is as close as our nearest neighbor in need. And Bonhoeffer stressed that Jesus was a real man living in a real world, teaching and healing people who were suffering, forgiving people who were sinners, and ultimately dying on a cross. And we are to be involved in society doing whatever we can to uplift people. That was Bonhoeffer's firm conviction. The church has to be active and involved in practical ways. In his letters from prison, Bonhoeffer referred to Jesus as the man for others, and said that the church is truly the church only when it exists for the sake of other people. The church is to serve God by serving the world of need, welcoming sinners, healing the wounded, setting the oppressed free, and proclaiming good news to the poor, making a practical difference to people's lives, taking action where necessary, and that informed Bonhoeffer's decision to get involved in a plot against Hitler. The need for us to be people of conscience, ready to take action, though at times there might be a conflict and a dilemma, and we might not know exactly what we are called to do and how we are to do it, and how to express our faith in our real context. And Bonhoeffer criticized so-called religious people on four grounds. One is that religious people so often are focused on saving their souls for a future life that follows life here on this earth. And when our faith is only concerned with personal salvation and personal comfort or personal prosperity and what awaits us after death at the end of this life in the next world, when our faith is focused only on these things, then our faith is lacking. Secondly, Bonhoeffer says that there is a problem with religious people regarding God as the one who can solve my problems and fill gaps in my life and meet my needs. And so Bonhoeffer talks about the Deus ex machina, and that really is a reference to something that would be brought onto a stage to kind of resolve an issue in a play. So, and to kind of bring in a solution. And God so often can be the one who is regarded as a sort of standby, as one who's waiting in the sidelines, ready to come on stage when I need him and call for him to make sense of my life and to help me sort out personal issues. Bonhoeffer criticized religious people who relegated God to a part of their lives and allowed their life to be compartmentalized so that God is shut into a corner. And of course, our faith has to influence and affect and determine the whole of our lives and every aspect of our lives, and is not to be shut in a corner. God has to be allowed to be free to challenge every thought, every word, every action, everything that we think and do. And then another criticism that he had against religious people was that they often thought that God favored them over other people and became arrogant. And I think we all have experience of that when some people regard God as a personal God who's really committed to them in a very strong way, and they're in a particular relationship with God which other people don't have, and so they're a cut above, and they become arrogant, and so on. The Bible describes God in Jesus Christ living and suffering with humans in the midst of everyday life, a real world that is tough, where there is struggling and there is suffering. And we see in the Bible God becoming weak in the world in order that we might become strong and mature. And we too are to be there for other people in the joys and sorrows of ordinary life. And all of this information about Bonhoeffer I have gleaned from an article by Dr. John D. Godsey, who's a professor emeritus of systematic theology at Wesley Theological Seminary in Washington, D.C. Why all this, you might ask? Well, this week I've been reminded of how important it is for us to know that the goal of our faith is not to make us feel gooey about our relationship with God. It's not to make us feel comfortable about every aspect of our life. It's not to make us rejoice in our happy circumstances, oblivious of other people's suffering. It's not to encourage us to be self-sufficient. It's not to make us feel fulfilled and happy, delighting in our success. Always, we are challenged to be aware of and concerned about the struggles and suffering of other people. And we are challenged over and over again to do what we can to help. Many, many years ago, whilst I was still at Theological College in Grahamstown, I read a book which describes Jesus as the man for others. And this, of course, is what Bonhoeffer describes Jesus as, the man for others. And the book that I read way back, it describes Jesus as being at the center of a cross, being pulled apart by his love for God, which is the vertical limb or the vertical beam of the cross, and being pulled apart by that, and also his love for others, which is the vertical limb of the cross. And so Jesus is there at the center, feeling the tension, being pulled apart, love for God and love for others. And I'm sure that you can understand it's a terribly uncomfortable position to be in, being pulled apart, feeling the tension, feeling the strain. And of course, it was so uncomfortable for Jesus that it led to a cross, literally. It's a fruitless question, a fruitless pursuit, really, to ask the question, am I doing enough to help the suffering? We can never do enough to help the suffering, and even Jesus couldn't. He couldn't heal everyone. He couldn't save everyone. He couldn't liberate everyone. He was tied to his own particular context and the limitations of his 24-hour day and the fact that he had only 3 years of public ministry. To be Christians is to live consciously at the center of our own cross, allowing our love for God to lead us into greater connectedness with others and into whatever action is appropriate and is possible to try to relieve the suffering of others. And so we allow our love for God to lead us into greater connectedness and love for other people, and we allow our love for people and our involvement with people and our connectedness and whatever we do for other people, because we have this huge burden for those who are suffering, we allow that to lead us into greater love for God. So the one informs the other. Love for God informs our love for others, and our love for others informs our love for God. And we're there at the center of the cross, being pulled apart, never in a comfortable place where we know that we're doing enough and that everything is okay in our lives. And so we allow our love for others to express and deepen our love for God. In a strange way, it is a privilege to live in a very flawed, very obviously flawed and struggling society, where we cannot be oblivious of the many inequities and injustices that cause such huge suffering. It's not easy, and the corruption and inefficiency makes our blood boil. And we need also to try to fix things in a deeply flawed society. And we cannot for one moment condone what is seriously wrong. But we are privileged to live in a society where the problems and the needs and the suffering and the struggling are so obvious. So we cannot really shut out all the problems of South Africa and the continent of Africa and the world, and including Syria and Ukraine and the Middle East and so on and so forth. We shouldn't allow ourselves to feel overwhelmed, because that will induce paralysis. But we refuse to be selfishly absorbed in our own little world, where all that matters is my safety and my comfort, and that all the members of my family are happy and prosperous. We refuse to shut ourselves up in that kind of cozy cocoon. After being involved in full-time parish ministry for 35 years, I find myself wondering every now and again, now in retirement, am I doing enough? And as I said, that's not really the issue, and I shouldn't be asking that question. But are we feeling the tension? The tension. Are we accepting that we're at the center of a cross, and are we really feeling that we are being pulled apart? Our love for God and our love for others and our readiness to kind of get involved to try to lessen the suffering of other people. Am I aware, and am I concerned, and am I involved? Am I moved by the struggles and the suffering of other people? Am I open to being prompted to act in some small way? We don't have to be part of a big program, and we don't have to support some great cause, noble cause that is perhaps national or even worldwide. But we are to allow ourselves to be challenged deeply, continually, so that we don't nestle into a comfortable cocoon. That's not what it's all about. And sometimes we lose sight of the bigger picture, and perhaps it's very tempting to just kind of focus on God and me and my salvation and God's goodness towards me and all that I have and everything that God has given me, and how wonderful it is to be in a relationship with God. Sometimes, it is tempting to focus on that instead of feeling the tension. And I think, like Jesus, as Christians, we are called to be people who are aware, people who are sensitive, people who sometimes are feeling the great pain of the world's suffering, and our compassion and our concern and our wanting to do something, and our love for God, and trying to reconcile the two. And that is our bundle, to be there at the center of the cross, feeling the tension and never being able to reconcile the two. so that we're never able to say it's all okay. I'm doing enough. I'm expressing my allegiance to God 100%, and I'm expressing that in my love for others 100%. We're always going to be feeling our poverty, but as I said before, refusing to be overwhelmed and trying to be alive to possibilities and opportunities, and obeying subtle promptings so that we're expressing our love for others through practical action. And so, not very comforting, but very challenging. And of course, we're not doing anything to earn the love of God. We're not doing anything to prove anything. We have this glorious freedom, the children of God, and we somehow have just got to allow the Spirit of God to inform who we are, what we believe, what we do, and to continue to be there at the center of the cross, people who take our faith, our vocation seriously, people who are seeking to make some sort of difference in some small way amongst the people we can. Amen, and God bless.